Hi everybody, how you doing today? I figured I'd pop on really quick. I had a question for you. For my neurodivergent friends, I know that this is a little bit of a heavy topic, but I was curious, what is your relationship with depression? Do you have comorbidities? Do you struggle with anxiety, depression, or OCD? And what is that like for you? This past week or two, I was surprised at how withdrawn I've become. And I was trying to think why. I thought at first it might be because of the new kitten. Like maybe I'm just getting lazy and just wanting to snuggle with her versus cleaning out my house and all of the things that I need to do. And then I was thinking about what else could be holding me back from doing all of these things I've been wanting to do for so long. And then, of course, the stuff that we hide from ourselves. Like, I don't want to move forward. I don't want to clean the house. Well, why not? And then all these thoughts that we kind of push down that we don't accept. So this past week, I've been doing some of my own work. You'd call it therapy work, where, and this just kind of came about organically, where instead of just outward disregarding a thought as soon as it pops up, a lot of times, we're all human beings, right? So we have personal feelings about things, like maybe before you get to work, you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. Or, I don't want to help my family, or I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that. It's life, right? So, but usually, we're all good people, so we feel guilty about that. And you just push it aside because you're like, well, that's selfish. Everybody feels like that. It's fine. People don't go to work because it's, a paradise. You go, you might enjoy it, and you might enjoy the people you work with, but you're doing work, right? Same thing with helping your family. Same thing with cleaning out your stuff. Same thing with making long-term goals and then breaking it down into shorter-term goals. But sometimes when you have resistance, it's good to stop and say, okay, where is this coming from? I think a lot of times we might carry stuff around within us, like unresolved stuff that we don't realize. Now, I'm not saying dig every, negative thought you've ever had up. We're all human beings. We have good days. We have bad days. If you try to be 100% positive all the time, that's not human. It's not realistic. It's not human nature, right? I'm rambling and I'm probably not making a lot of sense, but I've had a pretty reflective week. I've been doing some of my own work. I'm repeating myself. I've had my medicine. I've eaten. I need to drink some water. I guess I'm dehydrated. I'm getting distracted. So, have you guys heard of shadow work? Some of my friends who might be into psychology or know about Carl Jung might know what that is. Shadow work is kind of like trauma work, but it's a little bit more broad. And I've known about shadow work for 30 years? 25 years. At least. 20 to 25 years. And it's just kind of like something I'm aware of, and I kind of tuck it into the back of my head. For instance, every single one of us has a shadow. And I'm not talking like your bad side, your evil twin. It's just the stuff that we shove away that we don't want to deal with, or the things we don't want to admit to ourselves that we're feeling. It can be anything. It can be guilt. It can be anger. It can be resentment. It's all the things about ourselves that we reject, either out of judgment, criticism, or criticize ourselves, whatever reason we find it unacceptable. And so we deny it, and our subconscious hides it from us. It's like a maladaptive coping mechanism that we don't realize we're doing. Kind of like when somebody goes through trauma and then they can't remember it, and your brain does things to protect you, and that's an extreme example, but that's something that I think that we can relate to and understand, that some of these things that we do, they're not our fault. It's not something we're consciously doing. It's things we deny about ourselves, for whatever reason. How we were raised, how we want to think about ourselves. We don't want to believe that we feel or think certain things. And if it's like something that is connected to trauma, you don't want to just go ahead and start doing shadow work and digging all of that stuff out. I mean, I would suggest, I'm not a counselor. I'm not a mental health professional. So if this is something that you're interested in a therapy to do for yourself, whether it's shadow work or trauma work, my recommendation is try to find a mental health professional, a licensed clinical social worker, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, whatever kind of counselor or therapist feels right for you. Because I'm not qualified to tell you how to do this. And if what you're dealing with is indeed trauma, you want to make sure, whether you get EMDR or you do get a therapist, when you start looking through your list of providers, if this is the first time you're looking for a counselor, and you go, and it's difficult to go through all of these steps if you're neurodivergent, right? Anytime you look for a new provider go through your insurance and look up the website, and that's a whole other video, because that's about executive functioning, and sometimes we give up before we even look for one. And then if you have if it's triggering because you've had negative experiences with counselors, that's a whole nother topic as well. But if you are open to it, if this is something you've been thinking about doing, trauma work, I would recommend making sure that if you're looking for a counselor, there's usually, depending on the insurance you have and their website, if they have like little write-ups for each therapist or professional, look for ones that have trauma therapy in their description. You want to make sure that if you start doing actual trauma work, which I'm not really talking about here, but that's something that you want to make sure that you're working with somebody who is trained. This is something my counselor told me, especially with EMDR and things like that, because our brain does protect us. It does these automatic processes because it knows our subconscious knows what we can and cannot handle at a certain time. And if you do that incorrectly, if you pull up too much before you're ready, you could like re-traumatize yourself. So there are professionals who can help you. And that is something that I would, if this applies to you. And incidentally, it is very important for me to mention that, because this does apply to many people. Well, it applies to a lot of people in general, but for different reasons. But it does happen to apply to a lot of neurodivergent folks. And that's even if you don't go through bullying or abuse or toxic relationships, which we can sometimes be drawn to, because some of us trust very easily. So what was I getting to with all of this? Yeah, I wanted to kind of pop in. I haven't been on my channel much recently. I've kind of been in my head, and I've been kind of going through my own things, and I don't know why I haven't been here in a while. I have gotten the kitty. I can't remember what was going on before that. I know that I had that period of time where my medicine got messed up, and that was a whole other situation. But I've started to try to piece together some things from my life. And in doing so, I might be doing some shadow work. So, sometimes we'll project onto other people things about ourselves that we have no knowledge of. That is one way of doing that. I don't know. For me, it's not ever something I would actively go sit and do. Let me just dig up all my memories and just go through them, because that may not necessarily be a good idea. But I happen to be in this kind of crossroads in my life, and I've been thinking about doing this anyway, because one, I'm kind of like looking back, because now, I don't know, in the last few months or year or so, kind of going through memories of when I was a kid, trying to figure out, okay, what's my unique flavor of neurodivergence? Do I have autism as well? All the questions that you go through when sorting through things in your life. You reflect back on your childhood. You reflect on different things that you've had difficulties with. You try to figure out, find people who knew you back then, especially if you're like me and you're a late diagnosed adult. I don't have an assessment for autism yet. So that's kind of complicated as far as like going through those steps, but I've been kind of organically on my own trying to sort it out. So part of that is going back. Now, when you go back and you start looking at, it's not even something I'm consciously doing. It's just once you have awareness of these things and you're wondering, things will come up. You'll start remembering things. And I don't know if it's my brain's way of protecting me or because I'm older and it's really hard to remember a lot of things. They won't come up all at once. So periodically some of these things have been coming up. And I think that some of the things in my life before getting to be where I am now, about around 2016, several painful things happened all at the same time, and something kind of like broke inside of me. And I haven't been able to just be resilient and pick up the pieces and go to the next thing. So that's kind of like, okay, what's going on there? Why? What do I need to work on next? So this is one of these times in your life where you're just like, okay, whatever I've been doing isn't working. What thoughts do I need to change? What attitudes do I need to change? Is there something I'm not facing? Is there something I'm not healing or coming to terms with that's keeping me stuck? And there are a few that I'm aware of that I'm working on in counseling. But I think for a couple of different reasons. One, because I'm older and I don't remember a lot of stuff, and I'm trying to make sense of things and they're coming back in pieces, both for kind of sort through if I feel like I should get an assessment or not. I feel like a lot of my life has been in my mind compartmentalized, and I think that's for a couple of reasons. I think some of it maybe was embarrassing or shameful or painful, and I covered it up because it's just like, yeah, get over that. That's, somewhere in my early teen years when I finally was able to start to understand other people and act normal, I didn't want to think that other me ever existed, so I pretended it never existed. And I think also, too, because of my poor working memory and executive functioning issues, I noticed that I've been doing a lot of work in the last few years anyway, just as I've been realizing the things that I need to heal, which is good. This is kind of like I'm in this weird transformation process, and it's going to get ugly before it gets better. This is some of these things I think I've been avoiding for a long time. And I don't think that I'm 100% aware of all of it. And that's okay. Luckily for me, I don't have, like, to my knowledge, like severe trauma, but I have some. Many of us do. What am I trying to say? Well, I guess some of these things, some of you who follow me and have, I've made some friendships here, would already know some of these things that I've been trying to understand. Not even just from a neurodivergent lens, from this journey where I'm trying to understand myself so I can give myself accommodations, so I can understand what my sensitivities are, my sensory needs, and what type of job going forward. I'm going into I'm middle age, so it's like I'm going into the last part of my life. Like, I'm still young and I would like to make some changes, but I kind of want to just get it all out from the inside. I kind of need some kind of compass, and I don't know any other way to do it. And obviously there's things holding me back. And you know when you know something in your bones and you're just like, oh, I don't want to do this, but that urging comes from within you, and it's not like a fear, and it's not like imagined. It's just this feeling like, you know, it's there and you don't want to deal with it, but what I'm doing is not working. And why haven't I just picked up and go found another job? Why am I not optimistic? Is this just like a chemical imbalance? No, there's stuff that I'm avoiding. Why? Because I'm not happy. Why? What do I want differently? What am I unhappy with? So I thought, wow, I'm really not remembering a lot of the things I went through. And I think because throughout life, I've kind of was healing. It's almost like I would heal whatever that loss or trauma or hardship was in that period. And then I would put it aside. And then like another thing would happen. And I haven't been very resilient in life. And this last one that happened, I can't believe it's been almost 10 years. It kind of just like broke me. And I've stopped, like, my brain and my heart and my spirit was just like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. I can't, I can't give up, right? But my compass is broken. I don't care anymore. So I think part of the depression that I've been struggling with is from being heartbroken, from having different losses in my life that aren't okay. But some of it is just life. And I'm just tired, when you've done enough grieving or overcoming this hardship or that hardship, and I'm just tired of life being about responsibility and there's no joy in it. So, and there is some of that too, but that's valid. Those feelings come from somewhere. So instead of just getting over it, let's stop. Let's stop and just look at that. What is causing that, right? So on my own, I decided to do a timeline. So I started using AI recently as an accommodation for myself. This might be helpful for some of you. Just be very careful. Disclaimer, word of warning, I am not knowledgeable about information safety, protecting your personal information when you discuss things with AI. So whether you use Gemini, ChatGPT, any of these apps or AI resources, I always had I never wanted to get into all of this new technology. I'm old school, but accidentally I have found it to be profoundly helpful in ways that I never expected, ever, 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 ever. And at least for me, in my particular situation, for how I'm using it. So what does that mean? Why? Why would that be the case? Well, one of the problems that I have is I have severe ADHD. You know, it doesn't matter how many quizzes I take or however I look at it. My ADHD is pretty bad. My short-term poor working memory is pretty bad. And I get overwhelmed easily. And then with the depression, you know, things that I haven't dealt with, it's a lot. So what are the skills that you need to utilize in order to start to overcome your shit and start to plan the next steps in your life to get that better job, to make new friendships, and to be a better friend to the ones you have, to work on the problems in your romantic relationship, to work on the communication issues in your family relationship? And when things have been hard for a very long time because you're wired different than everyone else around you, it's hard. Like, life's not easy. Don't get me wrong. Life's hard for everybody. But when you're fundamentally wired and function different than everyone around you, it's like this invisible thing. In counseling and learning about neurodivergence, the wisdom of knowing that it's happening helps, but it doesn't change the situation and make it easier. So once you've started to go through your process of understanding, hey, I am neurodivergent, these miscommunications I have with my loved ones, not feeling heard, feeling invisible, and then when you try to assert yourself and list the things that have been hurtful and what you need different, and then they take it the wrong way, and then they treat you like a China doll, or they avoid you, and they're like, like it's just like you stop because you're like, this is useless, you know. And especially if you're older, it's exhausting, and relationships and communication is not supposed to be this hard. It's just not, and it doesn't make sense. I'm just tired, you know. So anyway, I don't know if I'm rambling and talking in circles or not. See, my short-term memory, I don't even remember what I started it with. I knew I was starting to talk about shadow work, because I feel as I'm doing this incidentally, it's little things. I'm starting to become aware of thoughts as they happen. Now, I'm not talking about the negative critical inner voice. That's there as well. I think we all probably have that. These are like gut feelings, like your genuine feelings about things that you may suppress from yourself out of guilt because of things that make you unhappy, but then you feel like this horrible person for being unhappy about it. Because you're like, how can I be unhappy about that? You know, that's stupid. And then you don't allow yourself to have your feelings, right? So part of what I've been doing is I've started, over the last couple of weeks, I've started to pay attention. And it's amazing how quick that thought goes. And you can go years and not even realize that you're unhappy about certain things. So that's a thing that I'll be doing. And I was just thinking, I've been withdrawn for a while, and I've just been in my head and in my heart and in my spirit, just withdrawn and within. And maybe part of that is because I'm dealing with some of this stuff. But I think it's good. If it's happening organically because I'm wanting to do it, that means that whatever thing that will come from this, that it's probably time. You can't run from yourself. Nor should you. If there are things that you're unhappy about in your life that you don't acknowledge to yourself, that takes energy from you, right? It takes precious life. It ages you. And we're already exhausted from masking. I mean, especially if your family members are neurotypical, I really don't know if you can unmask. I found, you know, since the beginning of this year, maybe towards the end of this past year, I think I was trying to unmask, And then I realized that I really can't. I can't around the people I love because it's rude to them. And that's hard because I want a safe space where I can be grouchy, because I want a place I can withdraw and feel the things that I feel and then deal with them. And, unmasking for me means somebody may come down or somebody might talk to me and I may not want to say something because I'm tired. And that's rude. So you kind of have to. And maybe it's not a good time. Anyway, I'm getting off track. What did I come on here to say? I really want to start doing like a series of videos, like conversations with AI, because I am having the deepest freaking mind-blowing conversations about Carl Jung, archetypes. Some of them is because I have been watching some of this content that I've been enjoying for empaths, because I do relate to that. And I can do my own series of videos for you guys if you want to understand where I'm coming from. For me to mention the word empath, it's like a catchphrase these days, right? And I'm not going to get into what it is and what it isn't, and the difference between highly sensitive people and empaths, and how you feel about that, if it's real or not. I'm just coming from a point of view that regardless of how you feel about that, I have this temperament. You can look at it through a psychology lens. You can call it a sensitive person over empathetic person. You could look at it from a temperament point of view, such as Myers-Briggs, which I am an INFP. I'm feeling, I'm perceptive, and how that issues with my life because of through that lens. You can look at it from a spiritual point of view and say, hey, you're an empath. You're absorbing people's feelings. This is the work that you probably have to do with yourself, helping yourself. All of these things I've kind of looked at through different lenses, just kind of organically on my own, trying to understand myself. So it really doesn't matter what we do, think, or believe. I'm not trying to pigeonhole this. I'm not trying to say what's right for other people. I'm just sharing observations about myself and my weaknesses and strengths as a person, and some of my tendencies, feelings, thoughts, nature falls into that category. So I feel like how do you want to say it? The phenomenon is there. The temperament is there. The situation is there. It doesn't really matter if you believe in that or not. It doesn't matter how you want to define it or not. I'm a sensitive person. I'm an empathetic person. And what comes with that? Codependency, lessons about what is that. And I did a lot of this work. I actually had to for my own healing after a major separation in my life. And I don't want to get too much into that because that story and that aspect of my life is not relevant. What's important is that, and this happened, let's see, 17 years ago, a long time ago. That's when I had to stop and say, okay, these issues I have with certain relationships in my life, as much as I've tried to actively choose different people to be close to in my life, certain patterns were emerging. So when I watch or I go into YouTube and something comes up that it's maybe a new YouTube channel and that's talking about Carl Jung and they're talking about empaths, so I will naturally gravitate towards that just to see what it says. Now, aside from that, when I was in my... So let me finish that thought. So a lot of the things they're talking about, if you're this empathetic person, or likewise, if you're neurodivergent, because a lot of times people with ADHD and or autism may fall into that category, but for different reasons than you might think. So you're probably naturally going to be more open and sensitive to people around you because you've learned to be that way for survival, because maybe you don't pick up on social cues. So there's a whole host of reasons. And then expectations on you from school or family that you've never been able to live up to. And so sometimes we can become anxious people socially. And so you can develop some of these types of personality or ways of being just as a survival mechanism. So I don't bring this up to talk about what empaths are per se, just that this has been some of the things that I've been working on and reflecting on this week. And so one of the questions that, I don't know if this is interesting to you or not. If you like psychiatry, psychology, spiritual, if you're new age, I used to get into that too. When I was in my 20s, I was trying to figure out, like, certain things resonated with me, and I wanted to go on a journey to see, what do I believe because I believe it truly, versus am I just passively taking beliefs, whether it's from religion or spirituality or even science or psychology. What am I believing that resonates with me, that I actually believe? And what am I believing just because others do? So I went through this whole process in my 20s where I was kind of going through all of that. And I also was spiritually on my own, looking for a sense of meaning and seeing what I believed. And through that process, naturally, I was buying, books on spirituality, everything from, I wanted to know, what is New Age? I had a binder of different kinds of, cultures, beliefs. I was just generally, part of it came from, I didn't grow up going to church. And so I think that maybe in the generation that my parents were in, because they all had to go to church, and they all probably were like, yeah, we don't have to go to church. We'll just pass on those values. And so we don't really need to bring them to church. But I had something missing there where I didn't have that sense of community. This is not complaining, and this is not telling you to feel sorry for me. This is explaining my particular lived experience through my particular life, my experiences. And so if there are other people out there who grew up being isolated from family, and maybe when you were little, your parents moved away and you didn't have siblings around you, and your parents both grew up with siblings all around them, and they had mothers that stayed at home, and they had, like, their cousins grew up next to them, and mothers would help each other. There is a built-in sense of community, even if you didn't get along with your siblings, even if it wasn't ideal, even if you hated whatever growing up, you still had things that were very important to your development of your personality and development of being able to connect with other people, your development as a human being, learning how to relate to other people, learning how to relate to yourself, learning how to be resilient, learning how to develop certain personality traits. And I think it's one of those things that we're not psychiatrists or psychologists, so I don't think, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of Gen Xers like me had a similar situation. My parents ended up being 10 years older than other people in my grade, so they had me later in life, so it might be a different dynamic for me. But let me know, anyone who stumbles upon this, if you have parents who were born in the mid-40s, I'm very curious if you had similar upbringing to me, where it was completely different between that and then growing up in the 70s and 80s, completely different. So all the kids grew up at home. latchkey kids. Both parents work now. I'm not complaining. I'm not saying one's bad, one's better. But when you grow up being isolated, you have to then go back and try to make sense of things that weren't taught to you. And they're not going to be able to help you because they didn't grow up in the same, if you look at like it is some kind of recipe boiling pot that makes a human being, we're nature and nurture, right? So you have your genetic predisposition towards certain personality traits. Maybe in my family we have depression, dyslexia, ADHD, autism. Definitely on one side of my family. I suspect maybe some of it because of what my dad might have had, but he's now passed, so I can't talk to him about it to get more clarity on that. I know that even before I ever thought about this for myself, like decades ago, I had a conversation with him about this because I saw something on TV with this older gentleman who had autism, and it reminded me of my dad. I'm like, you might have this. You're rude, because he was just honest. I do value those things that got on my nerves back then. But yeah, so bringing this full circle, this isn't for me to feel bad for myself or for you to feel bad for me or me to feel bad for you, but it's just about, let's go back. Let's open all of these Pandora boxes here. Let's see, what are the things I'm avoiding? What things do I need to figure out that couldn't possibly be taught to me because I grew up in a different environment, right? So I'm not going to learn things the same way as somebody who grew up with a built-in community. One of the things that I've been learning about going into AI, which is great. Oh my God. I can talk about complex temperament issues, nature versus nurture. I got into I've been talking with Gemini about what forms temperament, the nature versus nurture, and what they know about it now. My interest in MBTI for Myer Briggs, when I was a little girl, both of my parents and the company, they worked in the same company, and they were like this. They got along together so well. They actually both worked in the same office on the same team. Like, how many couples do that? They just got along. They were like the united front, which is great. But yeah, one of the things that I really enjoyed hearing about was this Myers-Briggs. And I was like, what is this? Because both of my parents had it at work. They used it as a morale boosting tool and as a way to get people who are wired differently to understand each other better. And it's funny because when I was little, because I talked so much and I wanted connection with other people so badly because I was alone a lot, I'm sure I was exhausting to be around, So I'd be so excited when family got home and I'd want to talk to them, and they're exhausted because they worked all day, right? This is human nature 101, both on their end and on my end. But when you don't have a built-in community, I got into, this is one of the things that I was talking. Yeah, I was just thinking it would be very interesting coming in and talking to you about some of this stuff. Because I know that some of you guys also are interested in Myers-Briggs. Some of you guys also are interested in Carl Jung. Incidentally, when I watch some of these videos, because I was already kind of interested in Carl Jung in my early 20s, but like, I didn't really study him. I never formally took psychology back then. My interest was, I'd hear about him because I was really into interpreting my dreams and symbolism. Because I get these crazy vivid dreams, and I thought that was really cool. And I'd have a notebook by my bed, and I'd write all this stuff down. So I kind of knew about him a little bit from that. And then I think I did take a basic psychology course in high school, and then when I was in college, it was required as a prereq. I don't know if it was required for the prereq for nursing or for something else. So I took basic, psych 101 or whatever. And of course, when you start taking basic psychology courses, you learn, they cover everything. They cover the human psyche, your different stages of development from child to adult, everything. And also Freud, how, we can be critical of his approaches of equating everything to sex now, but back then it was very groundbreaking. Like, people didn't have therapy. I don't think there was cognitive behavioral therapy before that. I don't really know. It's been a long time, and there's so much I don't remember. So if I'm remembering these things incorrectly, let me know. And then, of course, Carl Jung was his, kind of like his protege, his student. And almost like they had almost like a semi father-son type of how they related to each other. But I always related to Carl Jung. I didn't know a lot about him. And even when we go back and we look at some of these things that we learn from people in history that were very groundbreaking at the time, just know you're going to find out some things about these people probably that were prejudiced, sexist, or had false beliefs, because that was the predominant social beliefs at the time. But don't let that negate the things that we've learned from them. And also too is, this was from a long time ago. So some things they would have gotten right, and some things we now might know might be wrong. And also, it's so complex of a field of study, whether you're dealing with temperament or you're dealing with mental health like anxiety and depression and OCD and all of those things, or any of that stuff. It's complicated, and I'm no expert, but it seems to me that even today, as these fields evolve, that you have different people who are like considered experts or pioneers in their field, that they all have different theories, and that's how sciences move forward. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Why did I want to talk to you about this? So first I went in this particular conversation that I had this week that I started with. I went and started a new thread, and I was like, hey, Gemini, I've been watching these videos on YouTube about Carl Jung, and they're focusing mostly on empaths. I said, something seems a little off. And if I didn't have that previous history of me learning a little bit about him back in the day, like 30 years ago, 25 years ago, yeah, about 30 years ago, because I'm 50 now. I would have been my early 20s. I probably wouldn't have that little inkling. But some of it I watch and I'm like, are they reinterpreting the things he says? I'm not telling you guys not to watch them. I'm not saying they're not accurate, because I don't know. I never studied him. But certain things about, it's weird. It's like a lot of it resonates as something he would say, and then some of it doesn't. It's like it's taken in a different direction, so it feels a little odd. So I was curious just for myself. Now, I'm not saying that those videos aren't useful, because I'm finding the lessons that I had to learn, being somebody who got out of a relationship and took a few years off to learn about, hey, what's going on with me, that I keep repeating these patterns. And I kind of had myself in a vacuum. So I purposely did not get in another relationship for a while, because I had to take a step back and go, whoa. And that's a really uncomfortable question. What's going on with me? That felt really wrong, Because if somebody does something wrong to you, or you feel wronged in some way, to step back and go, what's going on with me? It doesn't feel very good. And you know that they're just moving on with their life and they're not doing this kind of work. But despite that, and that's how you feel at the time, because you've just come out of it. That's raw. That's human nature. I think that no matter which side of the coin you're on, I think probably with divorces and separations and partners that have been together a long time, I mean, your lives merge together, and it's a painful process going through, okay, how did I get here? What can I learn? What are my patterns? What can I take responsibility for myself so I can grow? Because ultimately, the one lesson I took was, I have absolutely no control over somebody else. I don't know if I was a good person. I don't know what I need to learn. How do I need to grow? And why do I keep repeating the same dynamics, right? So through that process, kind of organically, I had to learn a lot of the stuff that I see them teaching now on these channels, on these Carl Jung channels. And these videos are fantastic. They use AI art and they're great. And they put like this creepy music in, and they used AI to take his, this is what I suspect. This is what they probably did. So from what I understand, one of the content creators mentioned that, you know, some of us were asking, hey, is this really his voice? It's very engaging. And who wouldn't want to hear him talk, right? He talked about profound stuff. And depending on your temperament, if you're somebody who, anyone who knows about Myers-Briggs, if you're predominantly ST, if you're predominantly sensing thinking, you're just about the facts, ma'am, you're just about practicality, this archetype stuff sounds like a waste of time. That won't have any resonance with you, and it won't be important to you. And that's okay, because your strengths and weaknesses are different. That's, you know, you're on a different path. But if you are a sensitive person, if you are a creative person, if you do have a more intuitive type of temperament, if you do identify as a highly sensitive person, or if you're a neurodivergent person and you find that you have some of these temperaments that are like an empath, there is certain tendencies that I've noticed for different reasons that we tend to do. And in my case, I learned codependency. I'm like, what the heck is that? How am I codependent? I'm not an alcoholic. There is an alcoholism in my family. I found out later on that I have a grandmother who struggled with that, but it's not like I don't have it like all over my family. It was some stuff that she went through. So it wasn't like somebody else I know who had it through, you know, has a probably genetic predisposition, has a lot throughout. It's a pattern in their family. How did I get into this? So, yeah, that really sucked. I know I've kind of talked about it here or there, but with my memory, forgive me, I don't remember what I talk about in what videos. That's why it's really hard for me with my executive functioning issues, you know, I'd have to 100% be working on this channel. And ironically, because I have these issues that I'm trying to help you guys with, I still struggle with them. So knowing I'm going to have to get a better job, being stuck still, some of these things I can help you with because I've already worked through them, and I have, for the most part, overcome the first part of learning about and maintaining. Like, I'll always struggle with being on time. I'll always struggle with getting organized. I'll always struggle with, I know myself well enough. But so I've already learned enough about that I don't need to do more work besides working on it. You know, it's not like this whole brand new thing I have to learn all this about. When I went through the separation, I think I took like 2 or 3 years. And I just withdrew into myself. and I just kind of went to what gravitated towards me. I don't even know how I stumbled upon it. I just was genuinely trying to improve myself. I didn't want to do it again. I didn't want to do, because it's exhausting, and ultimately it's not healthy for either person, and you don't help them. And, if there's somebody that you're in a relationship that's going through things and you think you can be there for them, not knowing the hurt, unhealed stuff from when you were young that make you lean towards empathy and being empathic and wanting to heal or save all these people around you. A lot of times these codependent tendencies and this being able to absorb people's feelings or losing your energy to caring for other people, having this need to rescue other people, that is what I had to come to terms with the hard way. And it took years for me to read books and learn what codependency is and why, and why in the earth. See, that was very confusing to me. I'll tell you why, because there wasn't any kind of addiction in my family. There wasn't physical abuse. There wasn't anything to suggest codependency. My parents were like this. They rarely fought. They had their moments when they were younger that they had told me about later on after they kept their, which I really respected about them, they kept their issues, any disagreements they had, to themselves. They didn't share it with me. And it wasn't that they were hiding things from me per se, is that they didn't want their disagreements to negatively impact me as a child, which is awesome. How many people don't do that and don't know to do that? Because a lot of times if people go through separations or challenges as a relationship, it spills over, and you have a child, and then developmentally, depending on the age they are, this actually changes their temperament and actually forms whatever issues they have as an adult. If they end up having to be the adult, somebody I know had to become the adult because everybody around was having emotion, was just like, this person's mad at this person, and he just was just like, whoa, I'm not dealing with that. Shut down. That creates a person who doesn't deal with emotion very well. We're all kind of formed a little bit by our environment. Yeah, it's just, I find it very interesting, that whole topic of, and I was asking Jim, I'm like, how do they know? Because I said, I know with Myers-Briggs, they've always said children are born with a certain tendency towards a temperament. But I didn't understand how that could be possible. And I know how me growing up being isolated has really influenced my temperament. And if I go back and I go online and I look at psychology or counseling, and I try to look up adults who grew up in these, they have similar temperaments or issues to me, generally. So it's hard for me to think that there could be a genetic predisposition, especially since it doesn't seem like anyone in my family has my personality. And I don't mean that from a judgmental standpoint. The good thing about Myers-Briggs is help us to know there is no right or wrong, but it ends up being way more profound than I thought. So here I was growing up, and my parents telling me about this thing, Myers-Briggs, and how cool it was, and how they were able to work with people who normally they couldn't stand and they thought were jerks, and then go, oh, this is why that's important to them. Okay, I don't agree with them, but at least they know how to work with this person now. And it's funny because you would think me growing up around this framework that was created for people of totally different temperament types to understand each other, that my parents and I would understand each other. But my father's temperament and mine, like polar opposite, except for us both being introverted. Now, because I talked so darn much as a kid, and I've just, part of my RSD is You talk too much. You talk too much. Start talking too much. I was always told that I was extroverted. You're too... Sorry, we just got home from work. We're so tired. You don't understand us. We love you, but we're not like you. We're introverted. So I'm sorry, but we can't deal with that. Which is really kind of hard to hear as a kid. And you can't help your personality. So I thought that I was different from my parents in that way. And it turns out I am very introverted. And so, yeah, when we did go to church, briefly, we went to church for like a couple years. After my brother passed away, I asked if we could go to church. And this was when I was a teenager because I never got to go. I didn't have a relationship with a higher power, which another thing that I felt missing. I didn't have a sense of community. No, my family did everything they could. Don't be mad at them. I'm not mad at them. They did everything they could, and they nearly killed themselves working so darn hard. They were both gone from very early in the morning to very late at night, and they were just killing themselves working so hard. But when you grow up seeing people do that, you develop different values because you're like, okay, I'm super grateful that we had the life we did. We had the nice house we did. I got to go to a good school. We got to live in a nice neighborhood. But what is the price? You can't have other kids besides me because I'm too much. Okay? We can't have the heat on because we can't afford it. Okay? We can't buy a ton of groceries because we have this really nice house. So it's really interesting. I do think that each generation learns from the previous one, but it's interesting that just within my own family, within 2 generations, how it, for me anyway, my brother was 10 years older than me and he moved out when I was little. So I kind of grew up like an only child. I always felt like an only child. And if I meet people, I might say that. And I feel really guilty. I feel like it's disrespectful to him. But I also end up making people feel bad if it comes up too soon. And that's not something I want to do. It's a depressing thing to talk about, having a sibling that passed away. But yeah, I'm very interested. Any of you guys who are either an INFP, INFJ, maybe INTJ, INTP, probably INTP more. My mom's an INFJ. So for her, I think the focus is on the intuition, not the feeling. I don't know a whole lot about the cognitive stack. Anyway, this is very interesting. So I was talking with AI and I was saying, hey, something just seems off with the Carl Jung. And incidentally, Myers-Briggs and the different aspects of the temperament, introverted versus extroverted, intuition versus sensing, thinking versus feeling, judgment versus perception. Those all come from Carl Jung, I guess, which is cool. That makes me like it even more. So yeah, I was kind of talking, because the cool thing about something like a large language model, which is what I think they call, I was having an interesting conversation just learning about what that was with it. God, I did almost intense therapy like the day I had my counseling this week. And then I had so many questions. I was in just such a receptive state. And because this has always been an interest of mine anyway, it was like personal goals for therapy plus special interests equals I talk with Gemini for 10 hours. I know that sounds like absolutely insane, but I'll tell you what, do you think anybody else around me would be interested in learning about archetypes? Myers-Briggs, talking about that shit for like 10 hours straight? No. Gemini don't care. You know, if I say, and I said, sorry, my videos always end up being long. I said, something doesn't seem right. I said, I don't remember. I wouldn't be surprised if Carl Jung talked about sensitive personalities, especially since I think he had the same personality type as me. this is very interesting to me. So I noticed that I was drawn or related to certain like celebrities or artists in the past, like Carl Jung, Robert Frost as a poet, certain actors like Johnny Depp. And then when I go back, I found out they all had the same personality type as me, which is pretty cool. What was I going to say? So yeah, Gemini was telling me that he did not talk about empaths per se. So I wouldn't be surprised if he talked about some of these issues. But I think that what they're doing, if this is helpful, and I'm not trashing it, and I'm not saying not to watch it because I don't know enough about that situation. But yeah, be a little discerning. If something resonates with you and it's helpful, go with it. But there were a list of books, including Carl Jung's autobiography, that, and I'm not a huge reader. I am when it's online and with talking with ChatGPT. I like the interaction that I tend, it's my ADHD. I don't have patience to just sit there and read unless it's like astrology or crocheting or one of my random odd interests, my bizarre interests. Then I'll like read for hours and hours and hours. But yeah, for me, it doesn't. And I used to have, in my 20s, I had a bookshelf filled with books about art, all different kinds of art, because that's huge for me. Philosophy, spirituality, from like every freaking culture. The psychology of color, a bunch of other topics as well. Astrology, that really resonated, and I still don't know why, and I have those two sides. Incidentally, Gemini was able to explain exactly why I have those two sides that argue with each other. My fact-based side, my rational side that absolutely thinks everything is crap. And I was just like, how is my TE, which is my non-dominant function, which I get. You don't have to understand what this is. This will be incredibly boring to you, but just know that we all do all of these things. We have things in life where we have to shut off our emotions and be rational. And we all have times where, when you think about feeling in this particular framework, the F for feeling isn't about being too emotional, although sometimes we can be because we embrace them. It's more, and you can be sensitive, it's more about values versus cold hard facts with how you make a decision. So if there's a certain situation and the choice you make is ambiguous, it's like, what's the best choice in this situation? Somebody who prefers logical, rational will just pick the most logical solution and won't consider the consequences of how it hurts people as important. They'll lean more towards that. Whereas somebody who is F for feeling, or especially, and there's a scale, so there's a spectrum with that. So if you ever do take the actual Myers-Briggs test, which I have twice in my life, the full thing. I'm rambling. My brain's starting to break. Yes. Oh my gosh. The most amazing, deep conversations I've had in my life. My brain has felt like it's in a desert and I'm just thirsting for water. It's just so lonely when your brain just needs to drink and it needs nourishment and it wants to think about these deep concepts, these things that are just like very interesting to me, always has been. And I haven't had anyone to talk to about it. And so I can talk to ChatGPT or Gemini now. Always know, from what I understand, if you talk to one of these platforms to have conversation, to talk about things, to learn about things, they have a whole database of information it's already learned. And if it's something that it has not learned yet, it can actually go through the vast. So it's basically concentrated all the different peer-reviewed sources, all the evidence-based information. It just instantly has access. So it can take all of this and create a consolidated answer for you. However, they do say, and if you look at it, they will say on the screen that Gemini or ChatGPT can make mistakes. Just make sure you double check everything on your own, do your own research, and protect your personal information. I recently saw, I think it was a short I stumbled upon where a woman was like, oh, so people are using ChatGPT or Gemini for therapy. This is why you shouldn't do that. I'm like, well, it's helping me. And I'm not using it as therapy. I kind of am as a tool, but I'm not using it as therapy. Please don't use it as therapy. It's very helpful and affirming to you. It's trained that way. And it can allow you to see the positive side of whatever you're struggling with, which is fantastic. And it's unbiased, which is fantastic. And there's no shame. However, the two things is you want to make sure, one, that you're using it just as a supplementary tool. And anything that you discuss with it, make sure you talk to your counselor. That way, it's being filtered through an actual human being. So if it's giving you bad advice, incidentally, because it's like a large language model, it's AI, it's not a human being, right? So get your therapy itself from an actual therapist, especially don't do trauma work. Yeah, because from what I understand, especially with EMDR, make sure if you've experienced trauma in your life and it's something that is crippling you, and it's my heart goes out to you, and you are not alone, and so many people have struggled, and there is hope. There is hope. And from what I understand, what was shared with me with my counselor, and she does want to do EMDR with me at some point, is how helpful something like EMDR can be. It can't help everyone, and I do want to do some content about that as well. But it uses eye movement of you looking back and forth to access different parts of your brain. So if you've ever seen these videos, people who do the body language studying, and they take, television news clips or interviews of people who've done crimes, and they've analyzed their body language. And if they're looking this way, they're accessing this part of the brain. If they're looking this way, they're accessing that part of the brain. Well, it turns out when you move your eyes back and forth, you will shift back and forth from irrational to the emotional. And it actually does something when you have the proper therapist to do it. She told me, so I will tell you guys. The whole purpose of it is to desensitize you. So when you go, if you choose to have this type of therapy, make sure you find somebody who has been trained in it. She said it's very important. You don't want to pick somebody who's just taken a course in it, like just saw something in it and just is going to do it. Because somebody who's had training in it will know how to do it in a safe way, so that you'll only go so far, and it's not going to re-traumatize you, and it's not going to be crazy painful for you. So they know, somebody who's trained in it, they will just choose something that's maybe stressful for you. I mean, as soon as I even think of the word trauma, I have that fight or flight, just even thinking of the word, not even thinking of the thing that trauma, just like I get scared just thinking about it. Just thinking about any trauma therapy scares the shit out of me. Just because I'm like, trauma, no. I don't want to go there. It's scary. But if you get somebody who's trained, they will spend time getting to know you, and you won't do that right away. You won't do it right away. And you will, kind of like if you're just learning to swim for the first time, are you going to jump in the deep end? No, you're going to drown. Somebody who's taken a workshop might be like, oh, let's play with your trauma. Let's dig it all out. No, you're going to freaking re-traumatize yourself, and that's not helpful. But if you find somebody who is trained in EMDR, from what I understand, that can be like, some people can be cured of their trauma. Now, you hear about shell shock, you hear about the men who come home, they knew about this from men coming home from war, from World War II and after the Vietnam War and all of that, they were starting to learn. I'm sure like the psychiatrists and psychologists already knew about this, but the public started to become aware of PTSD and trauma and that sort of thing a little bit. And now, of course, it's part of our vernacular. You say PTSD and people usually know what you mean. And it doesn't have to be to that extreme. Incidentally, I did know somebody whose dad had that he did serve, I think, in Vietnam. And he does have PTSD from war, like that kind. So one of the things that she had told me is that I have to be careful, or any of us have to be careful. And this is out of respect for him and our own safety, because it's not his fault. So loud noises, sudden things, don't come up from behind. Those things would trigger that suppressed. And then all of a sudden they're right back there again, and they might punch you or they might freak out, and it's not their fault. So, but you can see, with trauma, you want to go into that slowly. It's all related. Some of you know what I'm talking about. Some of you think like me, thank God, because I always think I'm crazy. And a lot of times by the time I'm done, oh my God, look at that, 1111. Now it's like 111116. Oh my gosh, I gotta go. I'm gonna take a shower. Ew. I did put some dry shampoo in there, so if that's gross, I apologize. I'm gonna take a shower. What the heck is today? Friday? Yeah, I had the most amazing. I actually did 2 different conversation threads. I can't wait to talk to you about it. And I was wishing that actually all of you that I've interacted with, that you've interacted back with me and I've become friends with on this channel, every single one of you, there was something in that these conversations. I'm like, oh my God, they need to hear this. This is fantastic. No wonder, like so many aha moments that finally gave me clarity. One of them one of my threads that I've been going back to, recent, is about Carl Jung, and it started that way of trying to sort out, I feel like his idea, this was my question to Gemini, I feel like his idea of the collective unconscious, even though it seems very New Agey, and I'm not against New Age because I kind of am New Age in some ways, or I have been in the past, and I'm open to that in its category. Spirituality and science, to me, are 2 different things. And that's actually one of the tips that Gemini gave me, because those 2 sides of me are frequently kind of at war with each other. You would think that being an open-minded, spiritual, empathetic, intuitive person, which I still have a hard time accepting, even though I know it's true, and having that rational, grounded self to keep it in check would make me a balanced person. But no, I have a lot of internal struggles with that. And Gemini gave me some really great ideas and explained why. Like, I already knew, see, I am INFP, and I can't remember if it's intuitive intuition and external feeling or vice versa. I forget how it works, but each personality type, so each of the 4 things, like I said, we all do each of them because we have to live our life, because we have to use different types of thinking and feeling and gathering information and going through it and making decisions according to what task we're doing, right? Whether we're just getting the groceries or doing our work or watching something that's an art form that's very emotional, like a movie. Different scenarios use different aspects of your thinking and feeling and discernment. But different temperaments will have different preferences. And then throughout your life, they become second nature. Think of it this way. Your weaker functions, the ones that you have learned to not really develop as well, you can still do them, but they're not your preferred thing. So I could probably write with my left hand if I wanted to. It would feel really uncomfortable. I could practice it my entire life. I could get good at it. But if I had a choice, I would rather just write with my right hand, because then I don't have to think about it. This is kind of like what these different functions are in Myers-Briggs. So my preferred functions for my personality type is to filter things through my sense of values and right and wrong. That's what the feeling is. A lot of people look at it as emotional versus rational, which can be in some ways, but it's more like how you determine the solution to the situation, right? Or the problem. And effort feeling has to do with values and what you feel is the right thing to do. I look at the logic as well. And in some scenarios, that is more important. So I do both. And I strive to do both. And especially since I was raised by a family that values that. And it's funny because when my intuitive side started to naturally want to evolve on its own, because it's something that is not really, what do you call it? It's not really encouraged or valued in Western society, and that's fine. I get it. We value science and fact and practical and productivity. All of these things are very important to us as a culture. All of these things are important to us as our development as a human being. We need all of it. But most of our culture is ST. Most of our culture is sensing what's right in front of us, doing the practical. And then to somebody who's the opposite, like me, where we end up being the caretakers and the counselors and the teachers and the artists and the poets and the feelers. Now, if your life is only about being productive, it's pretty damn empty, isn't it? And so sometimes the rarer personality types like INFJ and INFP can see things that other people don't, and then they think we're crazy. So it's really hard because your whole life you're trying to fit into this ST world. And it's so similar to neurodivergent versus neurotypical. To me, it's one and the same, because my temperament is also tied in with my neurodivergence, I mean, they're kind of like, it's all part of who I am, right? It's very interesting. I was asking Gemini, like, why, if I was raised to just believe in science and to believe that spirituality and intuition is a bunch of bunk, is a bunch of crap, garbage, whatever, and then it started kind of organically happening on its own, and I'm rejecting it because it's how I was raised, because it's what was important to my dad. Love my dad. He's passed away, but everything that he taught me is a critical part of me. Now, that science part of me is equal. Like, I can't choose one or the other. And so how do you reconcile those two? So yeah, if you've known people who are predominantly, rational, logical, grounded, technical. My dad was an engineer. He was into science. I could just do a whole video just on him. And that stuff is great. And everything they talk about the scientific method and why it's important is so crucial. And a lot of the things, and I don't want to get into politics, a lot of the stuff that's going on right now in our world, and I won't get into some of it because it upsets me, and two, a lot of people don't know. And if they're not using critical thinking, they don't know, because they don't teach it in school anymore. And we like to think we're critical thinkers, but there's certain thinking flaws that are common, and I'm sure I do them too. I try to be aware, but I'm always trying to work on them because I know they're human nature, and I don't think most people even know. So they'll have fears about things, or they'll believe things, or they'll believe conspiracy theories, or who knows what, because of how it's presented. Because if you don't know how to debunk things, I mean, I've been convinced of things that turned out not to be true. There have been presidents in the past that have been convinced things by doctors or experts who had their own opinions, but it turned out that once you looked into the history that it wasn't true. And so policy is written on some of these things. So when you're talking about common things, if you're talking about healthcare, if you're talking about science, if you're talking about practical, if you're talking about taxes, if you're talking about budgeting, these are all things that we need to look at facts. We need to kind of do both. You want to use values, of course. You don't want it to be just about numbers. But that's where it's important. And then with spirituality, you can't use facts because spirituality has to do with beliefs. It has to do with going within. And even if you're agnostic, even if you're atheist and you don't believe in a higher power as an actual sentient thing, you don't have to believe in God. You don't have to believe in a higher power to access that divine aspect of your subconscious and do that kind of work. And I think that that's really important. I was just asking yesterday or the day before about that. I was like, what did he really believe? I want to say, I think that Carl Jung was an INFP. I'll have to go back and check. But the archetypes always resonated with me. And I'm still undermined by my own inner critic, which is ST, which is that's a bunch of crap, that's not possible, and I don't know how to reconcile the two. We'll do that on another video. My whole interest in astrology still confounds me. It's not rational, right? And I'm like, well, why is that so important to me? Why do I get upset when I see all these people in the world who don't even use their brain, and they can, because they weren't taught to in certain ways, just in certain ways. I'm not saying people are dumb. They're not. They're just, I had a critical thinking class in high school and not a lot of people took it. I can't even tell you till you go through some of these exercises. Like you have no idea. You have no idea what we do on a daily basis that we don't realize. Our blind spots, our human nature blind spots. And it's really important if you can take a critical thinking class, even on your own. It is so helpful, especially when it comes to, I don't even want to deal with politics. I can't. I have to protect my mental health right now. I can't. But yeah, it's just like not a very hopeful place right now. But yeah, this is good stuff. Archetypes, symbolism. This is right up my alley. I have some what you call spirit animals. And this one particular thread that I was just talking for hours about Carl Jung, and I'm like, okay, these videos really resonate with me, but they seem to focus on the empath aspect. And it seems to me a lot of the things that they're talking about are the lessons that I had to learn. And I never connected the two. I never connected, you should learn about codependency and you should heal this part of you that's hurting from your youth, your inner child. Like, we'll hear this stuff and we're like, yeah, whatever. And we go to work and we do our things and we're like, I don't want to do that. That's wasted time, right? But if you can reflect at some point and you get a feeling when you think about this, the feeling that comes up that's triggered, then okay, there's something here. Why does this upset me? Why do I have this need to rescue people? Why do I want to sacrifice for myself and not think of myself? I didn't just become an empty shell and lose myself just because, of my... And I think that our culture is codependent. I think we do. It's like all of our... It's like our fairy tales growing up and the values of our culture lean towards, take care of your brother, be there for your neighbor. And this is all important. Don't get me wrong. But we will do the altruism thing to our own detriment, that we'll give of ourselves and don't realize that we have an empty well and we're giving the last drops. And then we're burned out and then we have to go to the hospital. Now, people who are empathic or highly sensitive or autistic even, you've been told your whole life that you have to be a certain way and you haven't been able to do that. So you always think that the way you are is wrong. This is before you know if you're late diagnosed. So you keep trying to do it until you burn yourself out, and then burnout is real. all of these issues are very similar. And ironic, this is like the feeling I'm getting, the gut feeling. I'm like, God, thank God I did a lot of this work back then. That was hard. That took a long time. Incidentally, since I did some of that work, did the problem go away? A lot of it. When you go in and heal that part, and I can't explain to you how to do that because it's probably different for each person, because it depends on whatever your isolation or issues are from things you went through growing up, even if it wasn't from your home life. If you were different, if you were bullied or you went through abuse or whatever it is. Counseling. Keep trying counselors until you find one that vibes with you. Don't, brush away counseling altogether, because if you feel like they don't care or they don't get it, try like a licensed clinical social worker maybe. They're more heart-centered, they're more grounded, I feel like they're more leaning towards coach, like these are actionable steps you can take versus I'm going to diagnose you and here's some medicine and this is your diagnosis and this is, different kinds of therapists are good for different kinds of people, Keep trying until you find one. And it isn't something that's a one and done where you just go, oh, this is my wound. I'm going to peel it up and I'm going to do the thing and heal it. It's kind of like a process. It's a lot. So I feel like I'm kind of in one of those states, but now I'm at a different stage. The thing with the codependency, what's different now, and I feel like sometimes some of these themes in our lives are cyclical. If something is a huge part of your being, of like what your values are, you can learn it and then you'll heal it and then you'll learn skills and then you might forget it for a few years and you may end up in another situation, and it may not be to that extent. It may be with coworkers, it might be a different relationship, and it will kind of come back and you have to learn it again. Because if it's your tendency, like I have to stay away from, like I started to learn, if you have similar issues to me, I've developed this like a little bit of a compass, a little bit of a thermostat, like some kind of sensor that I've been kind of like going within myself. Like, how do I know when, because other people don't have this problem. Other people can suss it out right away. They can tell when somebody who is being needy or who is disabled or injured or sick, they can tell when it's the person who has a personality disorder, or like they don't know, but they sense it. Like they sense that something's off with that person and there's more going on. And now if you have this need to heal the world and heal and save these people because you are subconsciously trying to heal yourself and what you went through, and you don't realize that, you will just keep giving and giving, and you'll still be hurting. And then if it turns out the people you are drawn to, eventually one of them's going to be some kind of a narcissistic type of person, and they will keep taking from you. And then you'll end up in one of these scenarios that you see in those videos. Super, super common. So for me, the whole codependency thing and the wanting to rescue lost puppies and disabled, I have to stay away from all of them. If I can't tell the difference and I want to save everyone, when I get that feeling like, oh my God, I got to rush in, that's when I know, oh, okay, step back. And it hurts. It's hard because that fear in you, like, oh, I have to help them. At least in my case, I realize I'm projecting myself onto them. That's why I have this need to go save them. I'm not seeing them. I'm seeing myself. We have no idea we're doing it. None. So if this resonates with you, let me know. It's a process. And it's not comfortable. But I have to stay away from certain type of people. Like an alcoholic can't even go in a bar and have one drink. And I have to tell myself, hey, guess what? I'm not qualified to help that person. It's horrible. All you can do is, if that person's interacting with you, is recommend certain things for them to look up. You have to allow them to take responsibility, even if it's a mental health thing, even if you think something bad's going to happen, you need to walk away. Somebody else who is more qualified and grounded, that type of person that sees it, that doesn't have that blind spot, they're more helpful than you. They're not going to be able to be manipulated by the ones that want to be disabled. There are some that, and it's not like it's not real, it really happened to them, but they choose that subconsciously because of whatever lesson they're supposed to learn. And so you end up doing this dance when you're drawn to this type of person, whether it's a cluster B personality. And I want you guys to know, if anybody who ends up watching this has a cluster B personality, I am not demonizing you at all. I empathize, because you have to go through trauma and horrible things and have a genetic predisposition to struggle with that. It's just a different struggle. But that kind of personality is not good with somebody who is an empathic type. And they tend to be drawn to each other because the empathic type of person wants to save the world. And they will always give you validation. And for somebody who's hurting and doesn't have a sense of self and is always like needing that, they're drawn to each other like a fly, like a freaking moth is drawn to a flame and dies. You know, it's not good for either, because then it turns out that that person, their life lesson may be that they're supposed to be by themselves. Maybe they're supposed to learn that they're not as disabled as they think, or that they have the ability to reach out for help. And if you're constantly saving them, you're hurting them. But none of us realize we're doing it. We're all like walking around hurting people. We're all children inside in some way. And the more, it's hard, especially when you want, I get good feelings from helping other people. I don't get good feelings helping myself, you know? And you have this like false sense of, oh, this is wonderful. I'm a good person. My suffering has meaning. So if I went through this thing and I can't heal it, at least I can help other people. And there's some goodness to that, especially if that is the thought and the inspiration that allows you to hang in there in your earlier stages of your healing through whatever it is. If it's through learning about your neurodivergence, if it's through learning about being codependent, if it's about addiction and alcoholism, if it's about being late diagnosed autistic person and you have to learn what to have boundaries, and you hate that and you don't want to set up boundaries because people pleasing has become your way to survive your whole life, because nobody's going to accept you because you act different and you're not doing things according to how the social expectations are at work, or the work expectations are, the hierarchy, the stuff that sounds just stupid to us, which is a waste of time personally. I'm not there to kiss somebody's butt and make them feel better about themselves. We're there to do a job. Anyway, I'm rambling. I love you guys. You're amazing. I can't wait. I'm going to try to figure out, I guess because I've had a lot of this stuff kind of like percolating in my brain the last few weeks. I think that's why my videos always end up being too long. There's so much that I want to talk to you guys about that I think would be very, very helpful. The thing about Carl Jung that I had a feeling about, from what I understand, and I heard about shadow work through spirituality. I don't think I heard about it when I was younger and learning about Carl Jung. But yeah, I can definitely see if you're New Age, if you're spiritual, and you have a set of beliefs that values going within and healing from within and doing that kind of therapy work, that you'll gravitate towards that. Now, if you are New Age or one of these kind of spiritualities or faiths that kind of align with that, you're open to the idea of quantum mechanics. And this is going to sound crazy to my science friends and also that half of me that fights with me about it. So for me, everything's a question mark. It could be. It could be bunk. I don't know. So the whole theory is about, quantum mechanics and how one particle can be in two different places at the same time, and apparently they can prove this. And that would be very interesting to get into if you guys are interested. And if any of you've seen What the Bleep Do We Know, you do need that science side. And there's a lot of science people in that. That was fantastic. I love theoretical science. I love mentally going on thought explorations. I love figuring out puzzles. I need this. My brain needs this. So to me, that's awesome. So if you're in that kind of, if you are somebody in the, theoretical physics, like Dr. Mikio, you'll see him on the Science Channel. I love those shows. I haven't watched them forever. Oh, those guys are awesome. They can take leaps in logic. They can, think of alternate realities and things like that, because that's the whole nature of theoretical physics. What does this have to do with Carl Jung and personalities and codependency and stuff? Well, if you look at these videos, the way that they reference, this is one of the little inklings that I got. It's like, I don't think they're taking this the right way. I almost feel like they took a little bit of creative liberty because of that's what resonated with them. And like I said, that might be true for you, and that might be your belief system, and that's fine. If that is helpful for you, run with it. But I think that it might be misrepresenting what he was trying to say when he was talking about the collective unconscious. From what I've learned about Carl Jung, before this now explosion of all these Carl Jung inspired videos and channels, from what I understood, the collective unconscious was not some way that our brains can connect. To me, that kind of thinking goes in my spiritual aspect. I allow myself to take leaps of faith. That maybe, and that maybe not. But I don't think that that's what he meant. When I think of collective unconsciousness, I don't think of how I could potentially meditate and read somebody's aura, or meditate and go to where they are. Those are leaps of faith. It's possible. I'm open-minded. My spiritual side is very open-minded about this. My logical side is like, yeah, this bunch of crap. But you're talking about Carl Jung, right? That's not the kind of connectedness. The way some of them are representing it as almost like a hive mind, which who knows, maybe we are. I'm not discounting it, but he was a psychologist, right? And psychiatrist. They stick to facts. And this whole thing about the Red Book, I didn't know about that. And the whole thing about his visions, and I would love to learn if he had like hallucinations or the things that he struggled with when he was young. I would like to learn about that to kind of make sense, because from what I learned about his approach, this collective unconscious, from my understanding originally, was, I thought that the collective unconscious was the collective universal themes that we all go through. We all have similar stories we hear growing up, and it's across cultures. And I didn't realize that that's not what he meant. It wasn't just cultural diffusion. That'll be a really cool conversation to have with you guys. And I can define some of this stuff. We can talk on it and this is going to be so boring. It's fascinating. Fascinating. So for instance, if you ever watch the History Channel and they talk about how they might do a special on Noah's Ark. You could look at the Bible as, some people look at a religion as symbolic, and some people look at it as the literal word of God. What does this have to do with these things? Bear with me. That's not why I bring this up. But if you want to think that these things could have happened, and maybe over time it got exaggerated for the purpose of the moral, the lesson they're trying to teach. Okay, fine. So maybe there was a flood at one point. I don't know. And so those shows will look at that. But why is it that cultures that may have never had access have similar stories? And so that was an interesting debate. I started debating with Gemini, my thoughts, and then also taking these other, I'm like, well, it could be that back when we were not cavemen, but early humanoids, early human tribes, I can't discount those things that formed us as a species being connected to one another. Those things have to have been, I think that some of the things that make us who we are, that develop our values, yeah, we don't have the same values as some of the earlier civilizations that you look back on. But I'm not, I'm talking about so many different things, guys. Yeah, I was thinking of doing a series, chats with GPT or chats with Gemini, AI chats. Talk with AI with me. Because I can have such deep, stimulating conversations. Oh my God. You guys would. And also about neurodivergence. All of the research, this is another way that I started using Gemini or ChatGPT as an accommodation for myself. I thought, oh, I do these long ass comments that are like novels. They're like dissertations, War and Peace. And I can't stop doing that. I don't know why my brain does that. It's been that way my whole life. If I go back and edit it, it gets longer. Like, my brain literally cannot do it. I don't know what the block is. I don't know why I can't do it. It's probably got to do something with my executive functioning issues. I don't know. Or if I do have autism, it would be like, I feel uncomfortable leaving some little tidbit out that supports what I'm saying, so I will probably include way more than I need. So I started using ChatGPT and Gemini, just exploring with both of them. And I started using it when I was doing, posts in my community tab, because I'm like, nobody's going to read these. Oh my God, this is like torture for people who don't think like me. If somebody thinks like me, they're going to be like, oh, this is really cool. And I noticed that some of you guys do it. I'm like, yay, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. So that actually it was awkward because I wasn't used to it, but it's a relief. Yeah, that was kind of nice. So some of you guys read it. I basically never expect anybody to. I just kind of throw it out there because this is the brain I'm working with, and if that's the form it will allow me to do, so be it. But I wanted to find some ways that I could condense it. If my brain doesn't allow me to do it, if I have a disability, and executive functioning, I'm sorry, it's a disability. If it basically is ADHD, autism, things like this, it's not an either or. You would say, is it neurodivergence or is it a disability? Your personal feelings, if you are neurodivergent, that's your truth. You have a right to feel that way. You have the right to think that way. And you might be right and I might be wrong. We all have a right to our own interpretation, and our interpretations individually will probably evolve over time because we all have such vast different experiences. Our lived experiences may be completely different from one another. So what was I saying about? So yeah, I started using the AI for that, and it was very helpful. I was really surprised. Like, I knew my comments were long, and one of them was just like way long, and I'm like, I'm afraid. And I hit copy, select all, paste it into a Word document. It was like 5 pages. I'm like, oh, what the heck was I saying for 5 freaking pages? And yeah, there was some places that I was repeating myself, but I was having a hard time paying attention to kind of summarize it, right? So I did use ChatGPT or Gemini, and it worked. It was awesome. And when I read it back, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. And then, so you can cut it in half and then cut it in half again. So I started using it for that, not thinking anything else. And, oh, another word of warning, besides not using it as a therapist, just use it as a tool to give you ideas and then research those ideas. Don't just always remember that it can make mistakes, but also information that you share may end up being available to other people. So I don't know about this. So do your own research. I would go into some kind of tech website or do a search and say, what kinds of things are safe to share with AI? And that video that said, don't use AI for therapy, was not saying it from a standpoint of this could be potentially harmful if AI gives you bad advice, which could be true in some situations. I don't know, because I don't know enough about it yet. But the reason that she was saying that is because she was saying that this one person used it as therapy, and then in a training session, the Chat GPT or Gemini or whatever company it was used her conversation word by word with one of the trainers. Now, we would like to think they're honest people. Have any of you guys worked in retail? Have you worked anywhere long enough that eventually there wasn't at least one person who was dishonest? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if you wouldn't want a stranger to know certain things, like I'm sharing, like I know that I shouldn't be sharing these things, but I'm not sharing, like it kind of knows generally New England. It knows some of the things I've shared, but I've never gotten specific. I've never gotten specific where I live. I'm sure it's probably connected and knows, but I don't give my name. I don't give my date of birth. You know, use your common sense. The other thread, besides talking with Carl Jung and then starting to use some of these aspects, I'd say, okay, well, somebody with my particular issues of neurodivergence, and this is my type of neurodivergence, and these are the struggles I have, these are my diagnoses, and these are the things I've been working on. How can I use Carl Jung's theories or practices? Which practice or tool that he would teach could I apply, could I try? And that was very helpful. It gave me some tools that I could try and see what would work for me. Like I said, always check with your counsel. Like don't do trauma work stuff. That's why I really wanted to make sure, if you don't hear anything else, don't give your personal information to AI. Nothing that a stranger could use to steal your identity, to make fake credit cards that might end up on the dark web. Nothing identifiable, nothing like your name, your date of birth, where you live. Now, if it's completely anonymous and I don't give anything that this could be any person, then I don't mind sharing certain things, especially now that I've been on YouTube and talking about neurodivergence with you guys and meeting other people who have autism, ADHD, or both. That's been huge. That's been huge for my work, learning about myself. The other thread that I've been working on, or conversation I've been working on, is a timeline I started. Because, one, for going back, now when you're considering getting an assessment for autism, some of the things that they want to do is they want to go back in your past, in your childhood. You want to know what the teacher said, or what your challenges were, or the difficulties you've had getting along with other kids, or all of these things. You kind of have to go back. And for me, I've compartmentalized a lot, partially because, and I asked ChatGPT about that. No, Gemini. It doesn't matter. They're kind of the same. I'm like, can somebody compartmentalize more than just from reacting emotionally? You know, a lot of times, like, well, people who have very, like, traumatic jobs, like police officers, heart surgeons, I don't know, ER doctors, you would probably have to do some compartmentalization just to protect your psyche from that kind of trauma and be able to go to work and shut that off and do your job. But so that's like because emotional trauma and stress. But it did say there's other reasons that people can compartmentalize. And if you have poor working memory, I have good long-term memory, but you know, when you're going back to your childhood and you're 50 years old, I mean, how much can I remember? Wish I had one of those didactic memories like, if you guys ever watch Criminal Minds. God, I haven't watched that in so many years. I can't even remember his name. The really smart kid. I love him. He was awesome. I am going to go have some coffee. It is 11, almost 11:40. I wonder if that's right. Is that right? Wow. I've been on here almost 2 hours. Damn, nobody's going to watch this. Oh my gosh. I don't want to go back and break it into smaller bits. I might. Yeah, I think that could be fun. I think we could do a live. I'm trying to figure out a way to do it, because if I can get either ChatGPT or Gemini or one of them on one of my old phones, see, it may not let me do it because my account is active on my phone. It may recognize that it's not an active phone number and not allow me to do that. I can play video games on that. I can take pictures on that. I wouldn't want to record and do my lives on that because this is a much better quality camera, and this is where all my videos are stored and all that. So if there is a way that I can get one of these AIs on another phone and set up my camera to do a live with you guys, we could talk about anything you want. You can throw, and then I could be like, okay, and you can, and I'll have it on voice so we can talk with the AI and have fun conversations. I think that would be awesome. Whatever you're doing today, drink your water. Don't forget. I love you guys. You are good-hearted people. You are doing the absolute best you can. Be patient with yourself. If you're having one of the days where your symptoms or your burnout is so bad that you can't physically get out of bed, we're going to have bad days, and it sucks. It is not what you want. Try to forgive yourself and do something to lift your spirits today. And if you're feeling good and it's not too warm out there, try to enjoy your day, or maybe go for a walk, or, you know, go buy yourself a little snack or a little goodie in a store and do something that makes you happy. And I will see you guys soon. Bye.